Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. My brother stole my business idea, so I created a new one that left him in the dust. I was standing in the venue hallway outside the private dining room, holding a plastic flute of flat champagne, when I saw my brother's new logo on the screen behind him and felt my stomach drop so hard it was like I missed a step. The projector washed the wall in that familiar dusty light, and there it was, my color palette, my tagline, the exact product mock-ups I'd built at 2 a.m. on my laptop, right down to the stupid little icon I'd chosen because it reminded me of Mum's handwriting. Kareem was smiling like a man who'd invented fire, clicking through slides while our cousins nodded along. Someone clapped. My mum's laugh floated over the crowd, proud and loud. My dad leaned forward in his chair, eyes shining. Kareem's voice carried. So we're launching next month. It's called Batch Bright. Batch Bright. The name I'd written on the first page of my notebook. The name I'd said out loud to him in my kitchen while he ate my leftovers and told me, "This is actually good, Mina. Like, this could be big." I could feel my fingers go numb around the cup. My pulse started thudding in my ears. I tasted metal. And then Kareem looked straight at me, actually locked eyes with me, like he wanted to see if I'd flinch. I walked toward him before my brain caught up, the heels of my shoes tapping too fast on the wooden floor, and grabbed his wrist the moment he stepped away from the screen. His skin was warm and slick with sweat. "What is this?" I hissed, keeping my face neutral because people were watching. "Why is my work on your slides?" Kareem's smile didn't drop. He squeezed my hand like we were sharing a joke and leaned in close enough that his cologne hit the back of my throat. "Not here," he murmured through his teeth. "Don't be weird." I tightened my grip, nails biting into his skin. "Answer me," I said. "Now." His eyes flicked to our parents, then back to me, and for a split second I saw annoyance, not guilt. Like I'd interrupted him mid-performance. He peeled my fingers off his wrist one by one, still smiling, and whispered, "Relax. You'll get over it." It was a Thursday night about 6 months earlier when I first told Kareem about my idea, and I wish I could go back and physically gag my own mouth shut. We were at my apartment, both of us half sunk into my cheap couch, eating takeout because I'd been too exhausted to cook after my shift. I'd spent 2 years working in a commercial kitchen, first as a prep cook, then managing operations. Watching how much food got wasted, how stressed people were, how everyone wanted to eat healthy but didn't have time, and how meal prep companies were either ridiculously expensive or bland in a way that felt like punishment. I'd been sketching a plan for a meal prep brand that wasn't sad chicken and broccoli. Macro-friendly, yes, but with actual flavor. Family-style food done clean. I'd saved recipes, tested portion sizes, built supplier contacts, even priced packaging. I'd made spreadsheets. I'd made prototypes and forced my friends to eat them and tell me the truth. Kareem had just lost another job. Again. He called it between opportunities. My parents called it a rough patch. I called it what it was, a pattern. But he was my brother, and when he asked how work was going, I made the mistake of answering honestly. I told him, "I think I'm ready to do my own thing." His eyes lit up like he'd been waiting for something to latch onto. He asked questions. He acted interested. He said all the right supportive brother things. And when I said, "I don't know if I'm crazy," he leaned back, waved his chopsticks, and said, "You're not crazy. You just need someone who knows business. I can help you pitch. I know people. Let me see what you've got." That night, I emailed him a pitch deck. Not to be dramatic, but I sent him a piece of my life. I even wrote in the email, "Please don't share this with anyone yet." He replied, "Of course not. I'm proud of you." I stared at that sentence for a long time before I went to bed, letting myself feel, just for a second, like I had a teammate. The next few months were a blur of me working my job, saving money, and meeting Kareem for planning sessions that mostly involved him talking and me taking notes. He'd suggest things that sounded impressive but didn't make sense, like, we'll just go viral or we'll get influencers. He'd ask me to resend files because he lost them. He'd tell me he was talking to an investor friend but couldn't share details yet. Whenever I asked him to sign an NDA, he laughed and said, "You're being paranoid. We're family." My parents loved that line. They love anything that sounds like unity. Then, a month before that family event, my supplier contact, an older guy named Dino, who'd been helping me source bulk ingredients, called me and asked if I was partnering with Kareem now. I laughed because I thought it was a misunderstanding.
Why?
I asked. Dino hesitated. He came by, Dino said slowly. He said he was taking over your project. He asked for pricing. He asked for your packaging guy. He had your menu list. I felt cold spread from my chest into my arms. He had my menu list? I repeated. Yeah, Dino said. He said you were too busy to handle it. That night, I called Kareem. He didn't answer. I texted. No response. I tried again. Finally, hours later, he replied, "Can't talk. Big day tomorrow. Big day tomorrow." Like I was some background noise. So I did what you do when your nervous system is screaming. I went into detective mode with shaking hands. I searched business name registrations. I found Batchbright Proprietary Ltd, lodged 2 weeks earlier with Kareem's name listed as director. I looked up trademark applications. I found my tagline filed under his name. I scrolled through his new Instagram account, which had been created 3 days earlier, and stared at a grid of photos that looked suspiciously like my test shoot images, because they were. One even had my kitchen tile pattern in the background if you looked closely enough. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while my mind replayed every planning session, every time he'd pushed me to share a file, every time he'd acted like we were building something together while he quietly copied the whole thing. Which brings us back to the family event, the announcement dinner my parents insisted on hosting because Kareem said he had exciting news. I walked into that private dining room already tense, and I left it feeling like someone had reached into my chest and yanked out something I couldn't name. The worst part wasn't even the theft. The worst part was watching my parents beam at him like he'd finally made them proud, while my throat closed up on the truth. After I grabbed Kareem's wrist in the hallway, and he told me to relax, I went into the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. The room smelled like floral air freshener and someone's expensive perfume. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I pulled up the screenshots on my phone, the registration, the trademark application, the email timestamps. I stared until my eyes burned. I could hear laughter outside. Someone knocked on the bathroom door and asked if I was okay. I lied and said, "Yep." Then I stared at myself in the mirror. My mascara hadn't smudged yet. I looked normal, which made me furious because I felt like a house with smoke pouring out the windows while everyone complimented the paint color. I knew I had 2 options, blow up the dinner or swallow it and plan. If I blew it up, Kareem would do what he always does, act wounded, call me jealous, accuse me of trying to ruin his moment. My parents would panic and try to smooth it over. I'd become the problem, because I'm always the problem when I make the truth loud. So I did the thing I've learned to do in my family. I stayed calm and got strategic. I went back in, sat down, and smiled through dessert while Kareem basked. I watched him tell a story about coming up with the concept, while my dad nodded like he was listening to a TED Talk. I ate my cake and tasted nothing. When the dinner finally ended, my mom hugged me and whispered, "Isn't this wonderful? Your brother is finally doing something." The word finally hit me like a slap. I kissed her cheek and said, "Yeah, wonderful." On the drive home, I pulled over at a servo and sat in my car shaking so hard my teeth clicked. I called my friend Zara, who is the kind of person who hears your voice and instantly stops whatever she's doing.
"He stole it," I said.
"He stole everything." There was a pause. Then Zara said very calmly, "Okay, we're not panicking. We're documenting." The next day, I met with a lawyer. Not because I thought I could sue him into the ground. The lawyer told me the painful truth. An idea is hard to protect. A brand name and materials are easier, But Kareem had already filed things quickly. It would be a fight. A costly, ugly family fight. I left that office with a folder of options and a headache that pulsed behind my eyes. And then Zara asked me a question that changed everything. What part of your idea is actually hard to copy? I sat there staring at my notebook, and I realized the answer wasn't the meals. It wasn't the logo. It wasn't the Instagram grid. The hard part was the system. The backend I'd built quietly while Kareem played entrepreneur. The supplier relationships. The portioning method. The pricing model that kept quality high without destroying margins. The operations checklist I'd made for food safety compliance because I'd actually worked in kitchens and knew what goes wrong when you cut corners. Kareem stole the shiny part. So I decided to build the part that would outlast shiny. That's where I'm going to pause the story midway like you asked, because this was the exact moment I stopped trying to get my family to believe me and started trying to make reality undeniable. Kareem is the kind of thief who doesn't think of himself as a thief. He thinks of himself as a smart guy who saw an opportunity and grabbed it, and in his head, your pain is just an inconvenient side effect of his success. The fact he could look me in the eye during that presentation tells me he wasn't even embarrassed. He was annoyed that I noticed. My parents are the softer, slower version of the same problem. They've enabled Kareem's patterns for years because they're desperate for him to, finally, become someone they can brag about. That desperation makes them rewrite history in real time. If Kareem succeeds, he's a genius. If he fails, he's unlucky. Meanwhile, if I succeed quietly, it's luck or a hobby, and if I complain, I'm dramatic. It's a family system that rewards loudness and punishes accuracy. The part that makes me the angriest isn't even the business theft. It's the emotional theft of my credibility. I know what I saw. I have the emails. I have the timestamps. But I also know how easily my family will choose the version that protects their pride. That Kareem is finally okay, and Mina is being difficult. That's why I stopped trying to win with arguments. People like Kareem thrive on messy confrontations because they can twist them. The only thing that really corners them is competence and receipts. And honestly, if I had one regret, it's that I ever mistook we're family for safety. Family can be the place you bleed the most because everyone knows exactly where to press.
Update.
It's been 4 months since that dinner, and I wish I could say I handled everything perfectly. I didn't. I had nights where I cried in the shower, so no one could hear. I had mornings where I stared at my laptop and felt like my brain was full of wet sand. I also had moments where I wanted to text Kareem something vicious just to make him feel a fraction of what I felt. But I didn't, because revenge texts are temporary and I needed long-term leverage. Here's what I did instead. First, I stopped talking about my business plans to anyone in my family. Not my mom, not my dad, not my cousins who just wanted to support. I created a separate email, separate accounts, separate everything. I told Zara and one other friend, Callum, who works in operations. That was it. I learned very fast that when someone steals from you, the instinct is to explain. Explaining is a trap. It just gives them more material to twist. Second, I watched Batch Bright like a hawk without interacting. Kareem's Instagram started strong. Lots of polished posts, flashy captions, coming soon, limited drops, founder story nonsense. He posted photos of meals that looked like my test menu, right down to the lemon herb chicken. People commented hearts and so proud. My mom reposted everything. My dad started telling relatives, my son is launching a company. No one mentioned me. Then the cracks started. Not dramatic cracks. Small ones. A customer asked in the comments about allergens. No reply. Someone asked about delivery zones. Kareem replied with a joke. Someone asked about food safety certification. He deleted the comment. I watched him announce a launch date, then quietly change it. I watched him post behind-the-scenes kitchen footage and recognize the place. He'd rented a cheap commercial kitchen that was known for being lax. I knew that because I'd considered it and rejected it. Meanwhile, I built something Kareem couldn't copy easily, an operations product. Callum helped me map out what small meal prep companies actually struggle with: portion scaling, ingredient cost volatility, labeling compliance, batch tracking, supplier ordering, and waste. He said, "You're trying to sell meals. But what if you sold the thing that makes meals profitable?" That was the question Zara asked in a different form. So we built a simple, brutally practical tool. A subscription-based system for small food businesses to cost recipes, scale batches, auto-generate compliant labels, and track ingredient orders.
No influencer fluff.
No founder story. Just something that saves people hours and prevents expensive mistakes. We called it Prep Ledger. I didn't have venture capital. I had savings, a clear problem, and a refusal to be embarrassed anymore. I spent nights building spreadsheets that turned into prototypes. I tested with 2 local businesses I knew from my kitchen days. One was a tiny meal prep startup run by a woman named Renata. The other was a bakery that also did catering. They were brutally honest. They broke the tool. They told me what was confusing. They also told me, "If you fix this, I'll pay for it." That sentence felt better than any compliment my parents have ever given me. I registered Prep Ledger properly, trademarked it, built a website, wrote terms, made everyone sign NDAs and contracts. I didn't rely on trust. I relied on structure. It was boring, but it was safe. While I did that, Batch Bright launched. Kareem's launch week was a mess. Orders got delayed. People complained about cold food. A customer posted a photo of a mislabeled container, nuts listed on a meal that didn't have them, which is the kind of mistake that can actually hurt someone. Kareem responded defensively. His tone was condescending. Screenshots spread. He tried to fix it by offering free extras, which is exactly how you burn money when you don't understand margins. Then the health inspector showed up at his rented kitchen. I know because the kitchen manager, who I used to work with, messaged me one line. "Your brother is in trouble." Apparently, they'd found improper temperature logs and cross-contamination risks. Kareem posted nothing for a week. My mom called me furious and said, "Did you report him?" That accusation was so insane, I actually laughed a short, ugly sound. "Why would you think that?" I asked. She said, "Because you're angry." I said, "Mom, being angry doesn't make me a villain. He's failing because he's careless." She hung up. That was the week I realized my parents had already chosen their story. If Kareem falls, it must be because someone pushed him. It couldn't possibly be, because he built a business on stolen confidence and half-baked execution. Prep Ledger, meanwhile, started getting traction. Not viral traction. Real traction. Renata told another meal prep owner. The bakery told a cafe owner. People started emailing asking for demos. It was slow and unsexy and sustainable. Every time someone paid, I felt a calm satisfaction settle into my bones. Because it wasn't attention. It was proof. Then, last month, Kareem showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door and saw him standing there with that familiar grin that tries to disarm you. He looked tired. His eyes were bloodshot. He smelled like stress and cheap cologne. "Hey," he said like we were normal. "Can we talk?"
I didn't invite him in.
I stepped into the hallway and closed my door behind me.
"Talk," I said.
He scratched the back of his neck. "Look, things have been rough. Suppliers are being difficult. The kitchen is being strict. Customers are whatever."
"But I saw you launch something."
He said something like it was a toy. My stomach tightened. "How do you know that?" I asked. He smiled.
"People talk," he said.
"Anyway, I'm thinking maybe we can collaborate. You always wanted to do the business part, right? I'm good at marketing. You're good at details." Details. Like food safety is a detail. Like my work is a side note. I stared at him. "You want my tool," I said flatly. Kareem held up his hands. "I'm saying it makes sense," he replied, voice smoothing out like he was pitching. "Family helps family." The phrase hit me like a bad smell. "Family didn't stop you when you stole my deck," I said quietly. His smile faltered. For a second, he looked genuinely irritated, like I was being unreasonable. "I didn't steal," he snapped. "We talked about it together. No, I said. You listened while I talked. Then you copied my work and called it yours. He took a step closer. Are you really going to be like this? He demanded. Mom and Dad are stressed. They're worried. If you help me, it helps them too. There it was. The guilt lever. The same one he's used since we were kids. Make Mom cry, make Dad sigh, make Mina fold. I felt my heart hammering, but my voice stayed steady. If you want prep ledger, I said, you can pay like everyone else.
Kareem laughed, sharp.
You're kidding.
I'm not, I replied.
His face hardened. So, you're going to let me fail? I looked him straight in the eye. You already let me get robbed, I said. You'll survive failing. He stared at me for a moment like he didn't recognize me. Then he muttered, You've changed, and walked away. I watched him go, and I didn't chase him. My hands were shaking after I shut the door, but it wasn't the same shaking as before. This shaking felt like relief.
Okay.
Now I'll continue and finish the story. 2 weeks after Kareem showed up, my dad asked to meet me for coffee. Just him. That alone told me something had shifted. We met at a quiet cafe near my old workplace. My dad arrived early, sitting stiffly with his hands folded on the table. He looked older than I remembered, or maybe I'd stopped seeing him as a force of nature and started seeing him as a person. He didn't waste time. Your brother is struggling, he said, voice low. I know, I replied. My dad's jaw tightened. He says you won't help. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the milk cloud through the espresso. He didn't help me, I said. My dad's eyes flicked up sharply, then away. Silence stretched. The cafe hum filled the space between us. Finally, my dad sighed. Is it true? He asked carefully. That Batch Bright was your idea first? The question landed like a weight. I could have said yes and launched into receipts. I could have pulled out my phone and shown him emails. I could have tried to win the courtroom inside his head. Instead, I just looked at him and said, yes. My dad swallowed. Why didn't you tell us? He asked. I laughed once, bitter and small. I did, I said. In a kitchen. Years ago. And you laughed. His face tightened as if he'd been slapped. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Then he did something I didn't expect. He nodded once slow. I remember, he said quietly. We sat there, in the weird honesty of that moment. My dad's eyes were shiny, but he didn't cry. He just stared at his hands like he was thinking about all the times he'd chosen the easier story. What do you want from us? He asked. I took a breath that felt like swallowing something sharp. I want you to stop rewarding him for hurting people, I said. I want you to stop asking me to fix what he breaks. And I want you to acknowledge that what I built matters, even if it's not the kind of thing you understand. My dad nodded again, slower. Okay, he said. And you know what? He actually meant it. Because a week later, my mom called me. Not to guilt me, not to cry, but to ask quietly, can you show me what your program does? She sounded nervous, like she was stepping into unknown territory.
Invited her.
I gave her tea. I walked her through Prep Ledger on my laptop. She watched the label generator spit out allergen warnings and nutritional panels, and her eyebrows lifted. This is serious, she said, almost surprised. Yeah, I replied. It is. I don't know what will happen with Kareem. He might pivot. He might fail. He might blame me forever. But here's what I know. I stopped building my future on my brother's approval, and I stopped letting my parents' fear decide what I deserve. Kareem stole my first business idea because he needed the shortcut more than he needed our relationship. I built my second one because I needed my dignity more than I needed to win the argument. And the quiet satisfaction of watching Prep Ledger grow. Client by client, payment by payment has been the best kind of revenge, the kind that doesn't require me to scream. Kareem is a classic confidence thief. He doesn't steal because he's starving. He steals because he wants the feeling of a rival without the grind of becoming. The most telling part wasn't the business registration or the trademark, it was him looking at me during that presentation like he wanted to watch me swallow it. That's not ambition. That's cruelty with a suit on. He also uses family guilt like a crowbar. Mom and Dad are stressed is his favorite weapon because he knows it hits the part of me that was trained to manage everyone's emotions. He deserves consequences, not because I'm petty, but because consequences are the only thing that interrupts patterns like his. My parents are complicated. I don't think they're malicious, but they've been weak where it mattered. Their love comes bundled with fear, and fear makes them protect the loudest person in the room. They didn't just fail to stop Kareem, they taught him, indirectly, that charm plus outrage equals immunity. Then, when I refused to rescue him, they tried to paint me as the harsh one. That's the messed up math of families like mine. The responsible child becomes the emergency service forever, and the moment she says no, she's changed. The satisfying surprise is my dad finally asking the right question. Was it yours first? Because it means reality started to matter more than ego. My mum asking to see prep ledger quietly was another small shift. It doesn't erase the past, but it's a crack in the old story where my work was a joke. As for me, I'm not pretending I'm some saint. Part of me wanted Kareem to crash and burn publicly. But I'm also proud that I chose a revenge that built my life instead of consuming it. Building Prep Ledger was the smartest thing I could have done because it made me untouchable in the only way that counts. Not emotionally untouchable, but structurally protected. I stopped giving people access to my work through trust alone. And I stopped mistaking family for safety. If Kareem ever grows up, it'll start with a real apology and him owning what he did without blaming my reaction. Until then, he can keep chasing shortcuts. I'll keep building roads.